Ladies and gentlemen, our referee has called a stop to this contest, declaring the winner by knockout and new MMA show! Greetings, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another exciting round of a new MMA show. I am your host, Michael Hansen, and I do all kinds of electric things with microphones because I am an MMA cage announcer and ring announcer, and I am joined this week, as I always am, by my two buds who bring MMA punditry to new heights. Joining us first on the left side of your screens from New York, Mark Priaulx. Mark, what's up, buddy?
What's up, boys? Feeling pretty sleepy tonight. So I have the Dr. Pepper cherry that I'm quickly becoming addicted to. I think I'm going to be like Mike Francesa with his Diet Coke. Just have this with me every single episode going forward.
Nice,
so, yeah,
nice.
Ready to go.
And joining us on the right sides of your screens from Florida, the Sunshine State, the Nicaraguan Nightmare, Omar Artola. What's going on, Omar?
What's going on? The wife and I decided to do a couple more movies this past weekend. That new Liam Neeson movie, not a good one.
Uh-oh.
Not a good one.
Which movie is that?
Blacklight.
Man, I don't even know what that is.
You know, I found out about this movie 2 days before we decided to go see it in the theaters. I didn't even know he was coming out with a movie.
More importantly, did you watch Last of the Mohicans?
Shit, no.
The people need to know. They need to see the reaction.
Yeah, man. And you're a movie guy, bro.
Yeah. The ones that I have to go back and watch tend to be harder for me to get done.
They're so easy. You just sit on the couch and you click order or not even order.
I'll say, you want me to fucking pay for things? What's wrong with you?
All right, gentlemen. Well, guys, we have a very fun episode tonight. We are going to first go, as we always do, to our first segment on the marquee. We're going to discuss some fights from this past weekend's very exciting card, UFC 271, Adesanya versus Whittaker 2. We're going to throw some fights into our lightning round. We're going to find out who rose and who fell in our very own ranking systems with the Priaulx Rankings. Then we're going to dive inside the MMA sphere and find out from Omar what's going on in the MMA world. And then we're going to look ahead to this coming weekend. We have two fight cards coming up: Bellator 274, Gracie versus Storley, and UFC Fight Night, Walker versus Hill. So, boys, before we get into any of that, anybody who's watching right now or listening, thank you so much. If you're watching this on YouTube, please do us a favor. Hit that subscribe button. Hit the thumbs up icon so that you never miss an episode. Like our video. And please, guys, send us a comment down below. Let us know what you think. Anything you agree with or disagree with. Ask us any kind of questions you have. We want to answer every and all comments. If you want audio only, we got you. Find us wherever you get your podcasts. And, of course, find us on social media at @andnew_MMA show. Let us start the show. Gentlemen, this past weekend, the name on the marquee has got to be not one of the two fighters from the main event, but Tuivasa, who this past Saturday night at UFC 271 defeated Derrick Lewis by knockout at 1 minute 40 seconds of round number 2, stealing the marquee from the main event headliners. Gentlemen, let us discuss this fight. Mark, let's start with you. What was your reaction to Tuivasa getting it done in resounding fashion over Derrick Lewis?
Ty Bam Bam Tuivasa, Western Sydney, FTA, from the area, cue the shoey. What else can you say? Say anything you can think of. That man has arrived, and I friggin' love it. As of today, he is ranked number 3 in the world at heavyweight, which is an insanity. When he stepped into the cage against Stefan Struve in October of 2020, not even a year and a half ago, he was coming off 3 straight losses and very arguably would have been cut from the UFC with a 4th. And now, not even a year and a half later, he has strung together 5 consecutive KOs, the biggest of which, of course, was on Saturday to become the number 3 ranked heavyweight in the world. Insane stuff, and I could not be happier for the guy. As for the fight, they both really were fighting well early. Ty was pressuring and forcing himself inside, which he had to do. And Lewis was staying patient and letting his actual skills carry the fight. He wasn't letting it become a brawl. And if you remember, we all said last week, Ty's chance in this fight is if it actually became a brawl, because A, he's more comfortable than Lewis there, and B, he may have the stronger chin, we thought. So Lewis is fighting smart. He gets the takedown early in round 1. Ty has a pretty bad getup where he lets himself eat like 8 or 9 punches, most of which were clean. And to his credit, he does eat them. So, you know, Lewis is fighting smart, but then when Ty gets up, even he tries to turn it into a slugfest. He's even like waving Lewis on, but Lewis doesn't allow it. As he shouldn't. He lets the fight reset. He backs up. He stays in control. He takes the rest of the round. Round 2 comes. Lewis hurts him again in the first minute. He can't get him out, and he resets and he stays calm again. It really seemed like he understood the way he had to win the fight. And then they clinch. Lewis lands big again at like 340, and everything goes wrong. He lets the fight break down. And to defend him a little, it did kind of seem like he was close to a finish. Like even I was like, oh shit, I think he might be about to get Ty out of there. So maybe he thought that as well, and he kind of thought he had to jump on it, but he lets it turn into a brawl. And as soon as he did, as soon as it became shot for shot, the pendulum just swung a little bit Ty's way. And as for Ty, what an animal this man is to have eaten everything that he did to this point. I mean, most humans can't take shots like that from Derrick Lewis at all. And he took multiple and stayed in the fight the whole time. And then he lands the elbow of death. As soon as it turns into a slugfest and they're going shot for shot, he's the one that finds that blow. He was the one more comfortable in that craziness. He's the one whose chin stood up. And boy, did he ever put Derrick Lewis down bad. Just an absolutely nasty walk-off KO. A la his training partner and one of my all-time favorites, Mark Hunt. It almost feels like Ty is the new Mark Hunt, to be honest.
Yeah, man.
But yeah, Derrick just couldn't go a whole 15 minutes keeping it clean, and he loses another one in his hometown, which sucks.
Yeah.
But Ty Tuivasa is officially a star.
Omar, let's bring you in here. What was your reaction to Derrick Lewis getting slept in that way? And what's your reaction to Tuivasa's breakout performance?
Yeah, I mean, when we talked about it last week, we talked about the possibility that Derrick Lewis could lose this fight and what that kind of looked like and, you know, what his propensities are to curl up and not like to get hit and things like that. And that really didn't happen in this fight. I didn't expect him to get slept. Like, I didn't expect him to go face down into the canvas the way that he did. And it was really just credit to Ty just finding an opportunity. You know, the way that he was able to kind of control the wrists in the clinch there and kind of use that to basically like controlling the wrist, pulling it down, and whipping the elbow over the top. I mean, it's Muay Thai, and it's fantastic, and it was probably one of the more effective strikes we saw in that entire fight. You know, for as many strikes as Derrick Lewis landed, nothing landed nearly as clean as that elbow landed on Lewis's head. So credit to Ty, all the credit in the world. I was super happy that there was no cuppy involved that night. I was genuinely concerned once that fight ended. And yeah, man, it was a fantastic fight. I'm really curious to see how far Tuivasa can take it now at this point, because I don't really have a reason to think that he can't really beat Ngannou. And I say this, let me clarify.
Can you say it again?
Yes, let me clarify. I don't really have a really good reason as to why he can't beat Ngannou. He's not going to outskill Ngannou as far as like boxing, right? Like, he's not going to Cyril Gane Ngannou on the feet. That's not going to happen. But as hard as Ngannou hits, I have this newfound appreciation for Ty's chin. Mm-hmm. I'm not saying Ty can't get knocked out by Ngannou. That would be the dumbest statement of the year. Yeah. But I also don't feel like Ty would go down with one hit either. And it presents, I think, a real problem in the stand-up game. But Ngannou's got this new ground game to think about, so who knows? But it's intriguing is my point at this point.
Whew. Well, Ngannou being above him, I don't know if Tuivasa is going to get to Ngannou just yet. But, Mark, let me send it back to you. Put on your matchmaker hat. Speaking of Ngannou, where do you see Tuivasa going from here in terms of his next heavyweight matchup? I mean, he's really cracking up into the upper echelon of heavyweight, and there's some tough matchups for him, for sure.
Yeah, it's a really unique case because he kind of took this big jump here into this Derrick Lewis fight, and has now won it. And he's sitting there with a number 3 ranking, but he hasn't fought anyone in the top 11 other than Derrick Lewis. It's the only guy he's fought in the whole top 11. So he's kind of in this weird spot. As much as I love Ty, I don't think I can imagine him beating like an Ngannou or a Gane or a Stipe. But I mean, who friggin' knows what this guy can do at this point? But I feel like he kind of has to wait right now because, like, are we getting Bones and Stipe? Maybe. Ngannou's out a while. What is Gane doing? Blades and Dawkins is booked. Volkov and Aspinall's booked on that London card. Even Rosenstrike is booked against Tybura. Like, it's very crowded at heavyweight. So I think he's just going to have to wait and see what gets booked around him. The winner of any of those fights I just mentioned that are already booked, I feel like could make sense against Ty. But honestly, if Ngannou's hurt, and if we do end up getting Bones and Stipe, I mean, does that mean we're going to get Ty and Gane? We might. Like, it feels kind of crazy that that's already where Ty would be, but I'm not sure who else would have a better claim to be the one that gets Gane there. So we shall see.
Omar, who would you say is above Tuivasa at this point right now? Who would be a favorable matchup for him, and who would be a terrible matchup for him?
I think the worst matchup for him at this point is Ciryl Gane. I think Ciryl Gane is probably the most technical fighter in that division. I really need to see him and Stipe fight in order for me to really say that with like gusto. But just off the cuff, especially having Stipe not fought in a little while, his last fight being as disappointing as it was, Ciryl Gane is just, even with the loss to Ngannou, the way that he lost, I think he's still the most technical fighter that they have. Ngannou is just an animal. And I just think that if anybody in that division could keep Ty on the outside without getting clipped for an entire 3 rounds or 5 rounds, whatever it is, I think it would be Ciryl Gane. I think even Stipe, as technical as Stipe is, would probably get clipped at some point. And I think Ty throws like an animal too. And I don't know what he's done to change his hands and the way that he's been throwing punches, but even his punches look like they're coming at a different speed at this point. So it would be interesting to see, but basically all the guys above him at this point, all would be more technical than him. And yet I'm super interested to see what he could do.
I think Gane is probably the worst matchup for most heavyweights in the division, just because of the skill set that he brings in. You know what, though? I'm going to go back to what you said earlier, Omar, and I'm going to kind of agree with you. I think Tuivasa presents a very potentially difficult style matchup for Francis Ngannou.
Wow. Yeah.
You don't think so, Mark? What do you think?
I feel like I'm doing something wrong right now because I have been such a Ty believer his whole career. And then now I'm hearing you guys say this and I'm like, what the fuck? Like,
so, but the thing is, the margin for these kind of things at heavyweight are so much smaller than if we were talking about something at lightweight, right? Like there's the equalizers at heavyweight are just so much more common. You know what I mean? Like if we get into a brawl at heavyweight, even between Ngannou and Tai Tuivasa, as hard as Ngannou hits, that shit is still a coin flip. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah, look, I'm not saying that I'm taking Tuivasa over Ngannou. I mean, if
Tuivasa
exactly goes into a firefight with Ngannou, I might pick Ngannou because he can sleep anybody.
Yeah.
So I get what you guys are saying, but I think what's giving me pause is that yes, they're both similar, like knockout artists, crazy power, all that jazz. But Ngannou is like a highly skilled striker. I'm not talking like Ciryl Gane level of striker, but we've seen him do it against other top level strikers like an Overeem or whoever else you want to throw out there that Ngannou has put down. Ty, like, yes, I guess you could argue Derrick Lewis belongs in that category, but he's a little more of a slugger. And beyond that, like the guys Ty beat before that are Augusto Sakai, Greg Hardy, Stefan Struve, Arlovsky. So like, I just feel like I haven't, if I could see Ty get in there and do that against like an Alexander Volkov, I think my opinion would change a lot. Like if he could do that against a guy who's like a true skillful striker, then I would be like, shit, all right, maybe he can hang with an Ngannou. But I just feel like I haven't seen that performance yet that makes me think that as much as I love Ty.
Okay. Well, remains to be seen. Let's talk about Derrick Lewis. Excuse me. Omar, let me start with you. Where do you see Derrick Lewis going from here in terms of his next matchup at heavyweight?
Yeah, I mean, this was kind of a sad one just because, I didn't really want to see anybody lose in that fight, but, that's kind of the way it works. Officially he's number 5 now. He lost 2 spots to Tuivasa. He's below Curtis Blades at this point, which I think this is what
dude. I was UFC ranking so much.
I was just gonna say, and I'm pretty sure that's gonna piss Mark off something awful because
how can he be
knocked out Curtis
Blades? Fuck. God, I hate it. Now I have to go get my hat.
His hat. He threw his Knicks hat.
It makes me nuts.
He slept Curtis Blades.
Yeah, badly too.
No one monitoring these things. I can't. I need to take a break. I'm gonna get my hat.
And that was not too long ago. That was not like 6 years ago.
That's actually what I'm about to find out. So that was last year. That was February of last year. It was literally 1 year ago that happened.
1 year ago. Right. It wasn't a long time ago.
So I don't really know what to do with that because that seems kind of crazy. I would at this point, personally, I would like to see Curtis Blades against Cyril Gane. That to me is stylistically a matchup that needs to happen for me to really understand where Cyril Gane is in the division and, frankly, where Curtis Blades is in the division because he keeps getting like 2 grabs away from the top of the mountain and somebody keeps kicking him right in the face all the way back down to the what I fucked up the joke. I don't remember what it's called. What is it?
Okay, carry on.
The God damn it. Whatever the fucking platform is at the bottom there before you go up to the top. Summit. That's what it is. Man.
Isn't the summit the top?
No, the summit's the top.
Oh, it's the wrong. All right. Joke's over. Ruined it.
Hey, you win some, you lose some.
But yeah, I'm pissed that Blades and Dawkins got booked. I really feel like Blades and Gane was the perfect fight, and it kind of blows my mind that they didn't go with that fight.
Yeah. I mean, as far as Lewis, though, I mean, who at this point, I don't really want to knock him all the way back down. I really don't. I don't think that he should get knocked all the way back down. I don't think he should be fighting. I don't really think he should have been fighting anybody at number 11 in the first place anyway. Yeah. And so what do you do with him now? I mean, he's just kind of in a weird position. He's killed Volkov. I mean, that one was, I guess, a few years ago at this point. You could probably run it back at this point. Has he fought Rosenstrike at this point? I mean,
no.
We can do that. That's probably going to be the best bet. It could end up being like Ngannou Lewis 1, unfortunately. But I have a feeling that Ngannou or Lewis has a little bit more confidence at this point that he might be a little bit more aggressive against Rosenstrike than he probably would have been a few years ago. So probably where we want to go.
Okay.
Yeah, it sucks seeing Lewis lose 2 out of 3, but he's been here before. He lost back-to-back fights to Cormier and JDS back in like 2018 and 2019, and obviously he was able to right the ship. So there's no reason he can't do it again. I mean, granted, he's 37 now, which isn't exactly young, but yeah, I think he deserves to stay with something right there. The problem is he's fought like everyone in the whole division practically not counting like guys above him like a Stipe or whoever, but I'm saying the belows. Other than Rosenstrike. So yeah, that's where I would go. We mentioned that Rosenstrike is booked against Tybura. If he wins that fight, it kind of feels like he would deserve that step again. Lewis kind of needs that little bit of a step down. They haven't fought. They're knockout artists. I feel like that actually works really well.
Yeah.
Okay. Anything else you guys want to say about Tai Tuivasa being on the marquee before we move on? Okay.
It's a bad man.
Congrats to Tai Tuivasa for his career-making knockout victory over the knockout king, Derrick Lewis, this past weekend. There are plenty more fights, though, to get into. Let us now jump up into the main event of this UFC 271 card. Israel, the last stylebender, Adesanya, defeated Robert the Reaper Whittaker in their rematch by unanimous decision. Let's discuss this fight. Omar, let me send it over to you first. Were you surprised at all in the reaction, in the decision of this fight, the scorecards? Even though it was a unanimous decision, it was mired in some controversy. Robert Whittaker, right after the fight, and he maintained this position later on at the press conference, he thought he won the fight, but he did not convince the judges. He didn't even convince a single judge in a split decision. He did not get any of the judges. So what was your reaction to the scores?
Yeah, I mean, I was okay with the fight, or the score, I should say. I personally had, watching the fight, I had Adesanya winning 4 rounds to 1.
4, okay.
Yeah, and when I was listening to the scorecards and I heard two of the first scores were 3-1 or 3-2, 3-2, and I was like, fuck, did I give him too much? And then the last one was 4-1, and I was like, all right, at least there's a little bit of validation here that I didn't just throw that shit out there. But I think the real, having thought about the fight and having watched it again, I think where a lot of people are differing in how they're scoring that fight are the takedowns. And I think there are some people who are scoring the takedowns that Whittaker was able to land more heavily than others, probably myself included. I didn't feel like those takedowns were enough to win him the round. And I say that solely because there was very minimal control overall when it came to the takedowns. He was able to take him down. He was able to kind of land shots, but all of that while Adesanya was moving and getting up and eventually breaking position to get back to where they were at the center of the octagon. So there just didn't seem to be that level of dominance that I feel like a takedown and striking should give you in order to win an entire round, when the rest of that round, you're kind of playing catch up against the guy in front of you. It is possible that maybe some people saw the striking differently as well. Obviously Whittaker has his opinions on how that striking match went. I don't necessarily think Whittaker did enough from the striking perspective to beat Adesanya in those rounds. I'm not of the mindset though that like you need to take it from the champ. Like, I don't think you need to go in there with a gun and shoot the man in the head. That doesn't make any sense. Like, it's a fight. All the fights should be scored the same. Where I think it gets weird is the bias that I think everybody, including the judges, go into in a fight. The champion, I think, automatically has a certain aura around him that this is their domain. This is sort of their world, their belt. You're here to get something from them. And I think there might be this underlying assumption that you need to do something extraordinary to rob this man of the belt. And that's not really the case. But it may be a subconscious thing that people do when they're watching these fights, especially with somebody as dominant as Izzy is, right? Like, if Whittaker had won that fight, do you really feel like Whittaker would have technically been better than Izzy? Probably not. I know I wouldn't have. And so does that play into how the judges are scoring these rounds and scoring the way that they're seeing these fights? Because again, MMA scoring has been, and until something really changes, will continue to be very subjective. There are certain guidelines to how you're supposed to score the fight, but the reality is the interpretation of how these people are taking those guidelines are going to differ from judge to judge, especially with what their experience is and what their exposure is to the fight game. Some people appreciate the ground game more than others. Some people appreciate the takedowns and, the little control that he got in the takedowns more than the other judges. So it's a real fine line when you start playing these games that Whittaker and Adesanya are playing, because they were very close rounds. Even the fact that I scored it 4-1, it's not like I, walked out of either one of those rounds going, damn, Whittaker or, Adesanya beat the shit out of him in this round. They were very close rounds. Maybe the first round.
Yeah, first round.
Maybe the first round. But the rest of them, they were very close. And at the end of the round, I had to really kind of stop and think and try to figure out where I really felt like the round went. And, by the end of the fourth round, I was like, this seems like this is Adesanya's fight. I think Whittaker needs to finish this guy here. But it seemed like I was just one of many with varying opinions in that fight.
All right, Mark, let's get your opinion. What was your score? How did you score it? And what was your reaction to their performances?
So this was a little bit of a weird one. It was a little bit underwhelming. These guys had an all-action first fight, and while we all, I think, expected Whittaker to play it a little safer in this one, I think we still expected high action, and that is definitely not what we got. Instead, we got a Whittaker who was somewhat frozen. It wasn't quite himself because he was kind of seemingly so nervous about the counters coming back at him. He was almost afraid to even throw his right hand. And we got new Izzy, who showed up in the Jan fight and who has not left. It's sparring Izzy. He's still so evidently good. He's just not really going for it anymore like he was prior to these last three fights. And don't get me wrong, this fight was good in its own ways. Like, there was definitely some high-level chess spots happening in there between the two of them. Whittaker trying to figure out how he could get in, how he could land to earn points that you were able to appreciate. But it just didn't feel like either guy went for it in the manner that they should have in such a big fight and such a close fight for that matter. As for the closeness, I have rewatched it, and I had it the same way on the rewatch as I did live, which was 48-47 Izzy. I gave Izzy rounds 1, 2, and 3. I gave Whittaker 4 and 5. It seems like the swing round is kind of round 2. The people who think Whittaker won are saying 2, 4, 5 for Whittaker. 2 was close. I agree. But I still thought it went Adesanya's way. But other than round 1 being a blowout for Izzy, like Omar said, the next 4 rounds were all really close. Like, it was a competitive fight throughout. It's just that it was a fight that was more about Izzy playing defense and kind of freezing Whittaker than it was about any offense that was happening big from either man. And fights like that always feel a little weird. Whittaker, I feel like he's got to find that dog in him again, like that dog that made him who he is. I want to see him come out to kill in his next fight and accept that he may have to eat big shots to do that, because it does feel like the guy who could potentially beat Izzy is in there somewhere, and maybe still more so than it seems like it's in any of the other middleweights right now. Like, it still maybe sort of feels like Whittaker would have to be the guy. As for Izzy, Michael Chandler said it perfectly. I have the quote. He said, "We've gotten to a point where a dominant champ just needs to stand there, throw a few shots per round, and he will not lose unless he gets caught. Go fight. Don't you dare spar." And that's it for me. It's exactly how I feel watching him. Like, there are people acting like Izzy was dominant in that fight, and he wasn't. He just wasn't. Like, was he clearly better? Omar made this point too. Was it clear? Like, could Whittaker have won those cards? Absolutely. Did it feel like Whittaker was the better fighter? No. It did feel like Izzy was the better fighter. But you could fight 25 minutes and you could clown on a dude. You could let him throw 100 punches at you and you could dodge and evade, and only 1 out of those hundreds lands. You clown him. He whiffs 99 times, but you don't land a punch. You still lose the fight. You know what I mean? Like, you were obviously better, but you lose the fight 1 strike to 0. Like, it's based on scoring. So, like, yes, Izzy, you could tell, was the better fighter, but he wasn't scoring as much as he should have been scoring with how clearly superior he was. So he was letting it be close. There are people acting like he won it by so much. Like, I almost feel like there's been this de-emphasis on scoring amongst MMA fans. I don't know if it's because we have so many more casuals in the sport now than maybe we used to, but the amount of people saying like, "Oh, Izzy blew him out. It wasn't even close. How could you say you give these rounds to Whittaker, blah, blah." Like, it doesn't make any sense. The reason I'm saying it was close is because I watched the fight and I watched the strikes landed and the takedowns landed, and because factually it was close. So, like, facts are the reason that I'm saying it was close. Like, what is the reason you're saying it was a blowout? Because Izzy had prettier feints that don't count? Because he looked cooler in there and played to the crowd that doesn't count for any points? Like, we have to score fights based on scoring. So I don't like this take that Izzy was like so much better, because he wasn't. It was a close ass fight and he needs to do more. So to me, Izzy is going to have to give us a real performance in his next one. Like I said, I did score it for him. I scored it 48-47, but this is becoming a trend now where he's sort of sparring in there. And I really hope that it stops, because it's kind of taking some shine off a guy who should be an absolute megastar.
I felt like part of the narrative going into this fight, especially from Whittaker's standpoint, was that stylistically, Whittaker is the blitzer, and that's what got him in trouble in their first fight and ultimately led to him getting knocked out, was that he blitzed in. Adesanya is such an elite counter striker, and he got finished because of his bouncing and blitzing style. And I thought clearly coming into the rematch, that part of the narrative was like, okay, Whittaker's got to change it. He can't blitz so much. He's got to be more patient. And I felt like, oh, okay, the first few minutes of the first round are unfolding. I'm like, oh yeah, Whittaker's trying to do this game plan here. He's trying to be patient. He's sitting back. He's not blitzing in. He's not rushing in. But then throughout the round, it's like there was a fine line, it seemed, or maybe a gray area. I don't know which was more applicable, between Whittaker being patient and Whittaker kind of being frozen. Or maybe it's like one kind of bled into the other. And by the end of the round, he was just getting smoked. And he got knocked down, obviously, towards the end of the round. And I thought that Whittaker went back to his stool in between rounds, having survived that. And I thought he looked so defeated. He looked kind of lost. And I was like, I think this is a wrap. I think he's going to go out and then the next minute or two get finished.
I did too.
And then he comes out and he seemed to say to himself, all right, fuck that game plan. I gotta be more active. And he came out in round 2. I gave him Whittaker round 2 because I thought he came out way more active.
So did you give him the fight, or did you not give him 4?
I did not give him 4.
Oh, okay.
But I think I'm the only one here who did not rewatch. I gave him 2 and 5.
Okay.
But then throughout the rest of the fight, Adesanya kind of reestablished control. And to your point, Mark, Adesanya looked so dominant, and I'm like, man, this whole fight, Whittaker, he just has Whittaker's number. But then, like, throughout the fight, I'm like, I think Whittaker's punching him in the face more often.
Yeah.
I'm like,
exactly
is
right.
Whittaker winning? It's such a it was a weird feeling. It was a weird, complex, hurt my brain kind of experience watching that fight. So.
And I think that there is something to say to that, and it was kind of what I was saying before about, you know, kind of playing the game in there where Izzy there's already, like I said, there's already a bias when it comes to the champion that has already been this dominant, that looks this dominant, that walks around with the confidence that Izzy does. I think John Jones also walks around with the same confidence. I think John Jones also walks around with that same kind of aura. That's why I think the fights against Santos, for example, even the fight against what's his name?
Reyes?
No. Come on. OSP. The fight against OSP. You know, these were 2 very close fights that under normal circumstances should not have been close fights. But I think that's all because we all have this expectation of John Jones. Under normal circumstances, somebody beating, OSP 2 rounds to 1, or what was it? 4 rounds to 1, or all 5 rounds, or whatever the hell it was, 3 rounds to 2 is fine. You know what I mean? Good outing, good performance, you know, another notch on your resume. But John Jones, it was like, well, this is the decline of John Jones. And all of that is really just because of the bias that we all have towards who John Jones is and what he can bring. And I think it's the same thing with Izzy. And Izzy walking around in that cage like he's not going to be defeated, like he's not getting hurt, like Whittaker's not doing anything, I think does play to the judges. I also think him standing up in the cage while Robert Whittaker looks like he just got the shit beat out of him in round 1 plays to the judges. And I think Adesanya didn't sit down for, I think, the entire fight. And I think it plays to the judges. So,
You think so?
I do.
I totally agree. I think it plays to the fans too. I think everything you just said is a big part in why people were thinking like, oh, he blew him out. But like none of that
Yes.
has anything to do with scoring a fight.
I agree.
And I feel like that's lost on too many people right now. And the commentary didn't help. Like Cormier, you could tell, knew the commentary was getting a little ridiculous because there was a couple times where he was like, you know, Mike, I think some of these rounds are closer than you think. And Bisping was like, yeah, they are. But Adesanya's winning by 1 million. So like it just the commentary was a little bit out of hand, I felt. And I think maybe that's another reason so many fans were like, of course he won by so much. But I just like I said, I totally felt like Izzy was the better fighter in the cage. But, you know, if you're looking so great, but then you get jabbed twice in the face and all you do is throw a couple feints and throw a half kick that you pull back and you're just control, and then you don't land anything, you've lost that minute because you've been hit twice and you didn't land anything. You know what I mean? So there's too much of that happening for him right now.
I think the other, one of the things you can compare it to if you guys want to understand kind of what we're talking about when it comes to a champion and how much that's like you needing to take the belt kind of nonsense is not a real thing. Look at Volkanovski. Volkanovski goes in there and he fights like he doesn't have the belt. He goes in there and he fights like he's taking the belt from somebody that doesn't even have the belt. Yep. That boy goes in there to beat the shit out of somebody every single time. Who's the other one? Peter Yan. If I didn't know any better, I was pretty sure Peter Yan walks around with weapons in his pocket. That man is so violent. Okay? Who else? At the time, Khabib. Khabib was another one who was going in there just mauling people. Didn't matter who they were. Lower ranked, higher ranked, didn't matter. You were getting mauled. So it's just, I think there is, especially when we're talking about performing, right? Izzy talks about performing all the time. That wasn't a performance.
Yep.
It just wasn't. And as much as I love watching him fight, I enjoyed the fight because I do like technical matches, but it wasn't anything really to write home to. And those rounds were a lot closer than, frankly, they think they should have been because of the lack of effort. Like, Izzy didn't even look like he was tired by the end of that fight. No. And that kind of shit pisses me off personally.
That's what I don't want this to be misconstrued like we're saying he's not amazing because he is. Like, he's almost clearly the best middleweight on the planet.
It's the only reason we're having this
It's that he
conversation.
is that good,
Right.
that we're like, more should be happening.
Right.
Exactly. Yeah.
Right. It speaks to how good he is, the fact that he can go out and not fight more against Robert Whittaker.
Right. Because it's so evident when you're watching him that you're like, he could be doing more right now.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
saying that he stopped Robert Whittaker from doing a lot of shit in that fight. So it's
Whittaker didn't look great either. No one did.
All right, what's next for these guys? Let's start with Whittaker, because Adesanya's the champ. He's gonna wait for the next challenger, obviously. So let's talk about Robert the Reaper Whittaker, who won. He won this fight in his heart, guys. So that being said, Mark, let me start with you. Put on the matchmaker hat yet again. Who do you see challenging Whittaker next in the middleweight division?
So I think it's still pretty clear at this point that Robert Whittaker is the second best middleweight in the UFC. He's already beaten Cannonier. He's already beaten Brunson. He has not fought Marvin Vettori, and he has not fought the now up-and-coming Sean Strickland. I feel like those are the two. I feel like it's got to be one or the other. I know last week I suggested that Vettori should fight Strickland, and I still love that fight. So I don't know. It almost feels like those three guys should only be fighting each other, but obviously a fight can only be two. So one guy's going to kind of get left with an opponent that feels a little bit wrong maybe, or just get left waiting. So I guess we see like whose timeline lines up with who. Maybe Whittaker wants a little more of a break. We do Vettori, Strickland. You would think the fight has to involve Vettori because he's been out for a while. So you would think it's going to have to be Vettori fights one of them and the other one waits. I'm not sure why one of them would fight anyone lower. It feels like that's kind of the trio that has to fight each other right now. Assuming that Jared Cannonier is fighting Izzy, but it sure sounds like he is.
Omar, what about you? Who do you see next for Bobby Knuckles?
Yeah, no, I mean, I think that's the path that they're going to need to go. I'm pretty sure if I had to guess how it would go, I would assume Robert Whittaker probably does take a little bit of time, especially with all the travel nonsense that Australia is still going through and whatever. So I'm expecting Marvin Vettori versus Sean Strickland, and then I would assume the winner of that will get Whittaker. The only person I could even imagine one of them taking below them would be Darren Till, and that should be because Darren Till has a name to him, and he like always is just talking wild shit. So it's totally possible. I don't necessarily see it just because Darren Till has been out for so long and it's an obvious grab to, try to take somebody's spot. And Darren Till isn't an easy out regardless of who you are. So I think there's just more benefit, Marvin Vettori and Sean Strickland fighting each other than there is fighting Darren Till.
Man, I think Strickland is a great matchup against Whittaker. That's very interesting to me. I mean, Whittaker is an interesting matchup for anybody because he has such a kind of a unique style in the cage. And Vettori, too. Vittori's not an easy out for anybody.
Nope.
All right, what about the last style bender, Adesanya, guys? I mean, he's a champ. He's got to wait for the next challenger. But what do you see next for him? Omar, why don't you throw out a few names first?
Yeah, so Cannonier, Dana all but confirmed that Cannonier is next on the, for Adesanya. Cannonier all but threatened Dana White inside of the cage. We've seen that tactic work, I think, many a times, and it worked again. And so I think that's really going to be next on the list. Both of them fought that night, so the timeline should match up perfectly fine. Considering how both of their fights went, I don't think either one of them are necessarily injured. I'm sure they've got, bumps, bruises, and all that nonsense, but I don't think anything that's going to substantially stop them from fighting anytime in the near future. So looks like, according to what Israel is saying, he wants to fight in June. If the money is able to be, because Adesanya at this point is the second highest, according to him and Paradigm Sports, the second highest paid athlete in the UFC. Yep. So like Conor, I'm assuming they probably can't afford to pay him 4 or 5 times a year. I could be wrong. I mean, fuck do I know? But
theory they make
very possible. It's very possible that we'll see Adesanya maybe fight in June, if they can afford it. If it were me, I'd probably put him in something like July where he's got like International Fight Week, something a little bit bigger for somebody like Adesanya. But we'll see what happens. If June is the date, still a good time to have him fight against Cannonier.
Mark, if Cannonier is indeed the next title challenger for Adesanya, what is your initial take of that matchup?
So I was actually going to make this point when we talked about Cannonier next, because I know we're going to that fight next. I think he gets smoked.
Really?
I mean, I'll further explain why, I guess, when we talk about the Cannonier Brunson fight.
Okay.
But yeah, Izzy was on with Ariel, and he basically said, not basically, he said that is who he's fighting. He's like, yeah, that's who I'm choosing. Like, I'm not fighting Strickland right now, not fighting anyone else. It is Cannonier. And he said, I'm looking at June or July. So that certainly sounds like the fight. And Cannonier did his part. You know, he put an exclamation point on it. So there's no reason it shouldn't be. There's no reason it shouldn't be him.
Okay. That being said, boys, let's turn now to that very man, Jared, the Killer Gorilla Cannonier, who defeated Derrick Brunson by second round knockout in truly devastating fashion. Mark, let me start with you. What was your reaction to the Killer Gorilla getting it done with style over Derrick Brunson?
So the first round of this fight was a perfect example of why I struggle to get fully on board with either of these guys. Brunson's style is just so awkward and not something that you'd ever teach. I mean, it works for him, and it did in round one here, but it's sloppy. And Cannonier is just winging and missing. He's getting taken down. He gets cracked a couple different times by a guy who shouldn't be able to crack him like that. So, I mean, yeah, it's a good round one for Derrick Brunson for sure. Then round two starts with more of the same. He gets a takedown right away. And then Cannonier gets up. He lands the one solid punch, and Brunson kind of jogs away, and he looks up at the clock at like 4:12, which is never a good sign that early in a round. So I don't know if he suddenly started gassing or if he got buzzed from that one punch or what, but everything he did became like slow and labored, even more so than it normally looks for Derrick Brunson, which is always slow and labored. And Cannonier, while I never think he's that great at like finding the big clean shot, if you're slowed to that extent, you're definitely a sitting duck in front of him. And to his credit, he put a big exclamation point on the fight, just like he needed to do. He almost put Brunson through the canvas, and he has the great post-fight interview that Omar mentioned as well. But I don't know. I feel like a broken record on these two, but I just can't believe that these two skill sets are the cream of the crop in the middleweight division. They don't feel like they are close to the level of Izzy or Whittaker to me. And I personally think Izzy is either going to trounce or toy with Jared Cannonier, whichever way he decides to go with it.
Yeah, I happen to agree. Omar, let me get your take on this great performance, though, by Jared Cannonier. What's your take?
Yeah, so I'm pretty sure that Brunson gassed at the end of the first round. I don't even think he was out of the first round by the time he gassed.
Think so?
That dude he was going hard for those takedowns. And I think we had talked about the last week that was going to have to be Derrick Brunson's path to victory, right? Was getting those takedowns. And if you stop Derrick Brunson's takedowns, then things start to look a little bit different for Derrick Brunson, and it becomes a difficult night for him. And I think I don't think I've ever seen Derrick Brunson gas that fast in my life. That man's mouth was open by the end of the first round. It was I don't even really know what to take away from the fight, to be honest, because it just didn't seem like it was done right. Like, just seemed like a bad game plan in the end. Like, that's just not how Derrick Brunson really should have approached that fight, and he paid heavily for it. Should note, Derrick Brunson still apparently plans to retire with his next fight.
Does he really? I didn't know
apparently. So, yeah, I'm not really sure. I always hesitate to... I didn't really know he was that serious about retirement, because at that point, it does make it difficult to see kind of where his head is at. You know, why are you thinking about retirement at this point when you're still thinking about the belt? So it just two conflicting outlooks like that are just it's never been good in history.
Yeah, yeah. Man, I said to the guy next to me when I was watching the fight, towards the end of that first round, I said, man, Brunson is doing a good job of turning this into his fight, his kind of fight. And Brunson can do this for 15 minutes. And he comes out in the second round. And I'm like, what the hell happened to this guy? I think maybe that punch that clipped him really stunned him more than we realized. And he was trying to hide it. And I think it made him kind of gas or panic sooner. I don't know. He didn't
agree,
even look
only
tired. He just looked out of it.
I don't mean to cut you off, just real fast. When he came out for that second round, that was a strong, fast takedown. Like, he didn't look like he was tired, and he got that takedown. It was on the get up, and all of a sudden it was like, whoa, why does he look weird?
He looked so weird. He didn't look gassed. He just looked out of it.
I mean, you could blast somebody once real good.
Coming off the stool, I guess.
I mean, yeah, you know, you've had a minute to relax. You got one blast left and you go for it, I guess. But yeah, honestly, I wasn't, you know, I was like GSP. I was not impressed with his performance. You know, it just,
of course not.
It just wasn't great. Like, even in a loss, you know, we talk about guys' losses and, you know, how they still look good and whatever else. But that wasn't it, man. That just wasn't it.
For Brunson to have this crazy run, the whole blonde Brunson, this whole thing, and for him to get into this big fight and go out like that, it's like, you are who we thought you were.
Speaking of not impressed by your performance, real quick, we don't have to belabor this too much. Speaking of not impressed by your performance, that referee, I was not impressed by his performance. That man, and I don't know who. When he got introduced by Buffer, I was like, "Oh, this is like a new guy. I don't know who this guy is."
Who was it again? Why am I blanking?
I don't know. He was a relatively unknown ref. And he sure proved to be an unknown ref. And I hope we.
Are you talking about on the finish?
Yeah, dude. He let Brunson get hit like 2 or 3 times while he was already there.
Man, that fight could have been stopped a dozen punches sooner. Brunson was so out of it, getting caught.
Like a real. I'm sorry. A real referee should have put his body over Brunson's face at that point.
Oh my god! It was
and
real
like
bad.
he just has like one arm over this fucking 200-pound guy. Like, you about to do something to stop this man with one arm. It just
find who ref the fight.
When Brunson went down from that short elbow, which was beautiful technique, by the way, from Cannonier. When Brunson collapsed, the fight should have been over. He went down like a heap.
Oh, I disagree.
Over.
I actually disagree.
Oh, really? Oh, I
he
thought the fight was
looking up at Cannonier.
over.
I think it was not until the elbow landed on the ground that it was over.
Yeah, I think once his head bounced though and his eyes were closed, I think he were good. But
it was too many. But
the 2 that came after it were just unnecessary. They're just and as hard as they were, man, those were bad. Those were bad strikes.
All on the ref, man. That was not good in my eyes.
Here we go. The ref.
Kerry Hatley.
Kerry Hatley. Yeah, I know Kerry Hatley.
Oof, bad one.
Yeah.
I love how Kerry Hatley has fucking stats. 32% KO, 17% submissions. It's fantastic.
All right, let's move on. Congrats to Jared Cannonier. Congrats on his win. Congrats on probably getting the next title shot and his nice big payday with that.
Yep.
Yeah, I don't know what they do with Brunson, because if he's really retiring in his next fight, it's almost like you don't want to let him fight anyone who's like ranked that well, because what if he wins? It's kind of like he put himself in a shitty fight probably by saying that.
Yeah, for sure.
Oh, give him Darren Till.
Yeah, man. Let's keep marching down this card, gentlemen. Renato Moicano, second round submission of Alexander the Great Hernandez. Not so great performance from Hernandez. Mark, let's start with you. What was your take on this very impressive performance by Moicano?
Can we start with Omar, because
please,
getting some error message about my microphone here. So.
This is no good. We can still hear you though.
Yeah, Omar, take it.
So this one was interesting, because I think when we talked about it last week, we were talking about how recently Moicano seems to have been talking a lot more about utilizing his jiu-jitsu and utilizing his ground game a lot more, and how he was kind of falling in love with the hands a little bit too much. And I think that's exactly what you saw in this fight, his ability to kind of make himself a little bit more well-rounded. He definitely used his strikes super effectively, but when it went down to the ground, he was able to capitalize on it 100%. And I honestly, I felt bad for Hernandez. Hernandez is I like Hernandez. I think Hernandez is very skilled, but he keeps running into these guys sometimes, and he just hits a fucking wall. And I feel bad for him, man. But it was a solid performance from Moicano, and you can't take anything away from him.
Yeah, man. Mark, what was your take on Moicano's nice win?
Yeah, so seemingly I'm back here. You guys hear me good, right?
Yeah.
All right. They had a really competitive first round. Hernandez scored more in the striking, Moicano more in the grappling, but it was competitive everywhere. It was looking like it was going to be a close fight, back and forth fight. And then in round 2, Moicano is able to drop Hernandez and find the choke. And that sequence is why I've always been a fan of Moicano. Like, he's had his chin check bad a few different times, but it hasn't changed him. He has not said, like, okay, I just need to become this cautious jits guy. Like, no, that man still goes in there for the kill. Maybe his chin isn't great, but he knows that he has striking that can still be a weapon, and he's not afraid to use it. He still goes for it, and it's easy to love guys who put it on the line like that. And yeah, he drops Hernandez. Hernandez makes one mistake on the mat, trying to get up too quick with his back to Moicano, and that's all a guy like that needs. Like, his jits is nasty, and slaps on the RNC, and the tap was academic after that. You know, big win for Moicano. He's very steadily marching up these lightweight ranks since making the jump up to 155.
Yeah, man. I feel bad for Hernandez as well. Like Omar, I feel like I want to like Hernandez, but he just keeps running into these great performances. I mean, the first one that kind of put the brakes on his train was he ran into one of the last great performances of Cowboy Cerrone.
Yep.
And now he ran into Moicano, who just really had just such a great showing. Moicano, really, he has like sneaky power to me.
Yeah.
Like, if you look at those two guys, you're like, oh, Hernandez is the one who's going to like have the bigger power and like might make a difference. Moicano's long and lean for the division, but his punches had some real snap and really hurt Hernandez.
Yeah, such different striking styles. Hernandez's is so like tight and wired, and Moicano's is so loose, but equal power.
Yeah, for sure. So what do you guys see next for Renato Moicano? Omar?
So, I mean, at this point, I would think Moicano is probably going to get somebody in the top 15 at this point. So, just kind of looking at the landscape from a stylistic standpoint, I think probably the most interesting fight I could really look at right now is probably him versus Mateusz Gamrot. That's a fucking banger right there, frankly.
Man, what a fight.
Yeah, I'm gonna go with that one. I really want to see that fight.
God, lightweight's so good. Mark, what about you?
That is a banger. I almost said that one myself. I pumped the brakes a little more slightly. I agree that you could kind of go a lot of routes with Moicano. Like, if he got jumped into fighting someone who was ranked like 10, 11, 12, like, it wouldn't shock me. Or if he didn't even get a ranked opponent, if he got someone else who's like right there. I land kind of in the middle for the same reason as Omar. I just think him and Diego Ferreira, who I think is 15 in the UFC's rankings right now, would be such a scrap. Like, they both are guys who are all action. They can compete everywhere. I think we get some sick scrambles. And if Moicano could win that, then you can't deny him being ranked. But kind of everything I just said also applies to Mateusz Gamrot. So, either of those fights, I like that fight too.
Absolutely. Do you guys want to say anything about Hernandez and where he might go next? You just want to keep moving on?
No, I'll say something.
Go for it.
You guys kind of touched on it, but he just can't seem to put a run together. Like, he's clearly good, but ever since his debut KO of Beneil, which obviously is a huge thing to have on his resume, he's gone 4-4, just alternating win-loss. He can't seem to like put a streak together. I think maybe something like him and Grant Dawson could work well. Dawson was a guy who was like flying up the ranks until he had that recent draw with Rick Glenn that kind of pumped his brakes, and they're pretty similar fighters. So I actually think they're like a good litmus test of who might be the more real one to kind of get, another shot at a near ranked type of guy. You know what I mean? So I think that'd be a cool fight.
Nice. Omar, you have any words for next matches for Hernandez?
Yeah, if I had to go with one, I'd probably go with somebody like Scott Holtzman. He's coming off of 2 losses. Hernandez is basically has lost 2 of his last 3. So it's, regardless of whether they were in a row or not, it's still not great. I just kind of think that one of them needs a win at this point. So just throw them in there and see kind of who comes out on top.
For sure. And one last fight, boys, before we jump into our lightning round that I want to discuss. Also in the lightweight division, Bobby King Green, unanimous decision, nasty UD victory over Nasrat Haqparast. Mark, let me start with you. What was your reaction to Bobby Green's another really nice performance from him?
Bobby King Green, man. What a roll we are on right now. And I say we because it feels like we're all on it together somehow.
Yes.
Like, it's not just Bobby Green. It's Bobby Green and all of us. And it sounds funny, but like the crowd in Houston felt that too. You could tell, man, there's just a groundswell of support behind Bobby Green right now. And honestly, this should have happened sooner. Like, he's always been this guy. He's always been a guy hardcore's love. Like, we've been on this Bobby Green train. But I'm so glad it's happening for him now. That had to be a hell of an experience for him. All the chants and everything. That had to be awesome. As for the fight, boy, did he ever put it on Nasrat Haqparast. His boxing is so clean. He's so accurate landing through the guard. He rolls with punches so well. You can't break his confidence for anything. I mean, this version of Bobby Green, for as long as it lasts, it is a real problem. Someone is going to have to crack him bad, or just like wrestle hump him into dust and break his spirit to shake him off the level of confidence that he's fighting with right now. That was a hell of a show that he put on.
Omar?
Yeah, I tend to agree. I mean, Bobby Green's always been a good time. Win or loss, he's always been a good time. I mean, you can probably equate him similarly to Daly in the sense that regardless of whether Daly won or lost, with the exception of that one fight that we mentioned that time ago, right? Regardless of that one fight, everything else that Paul Daly's put on has been a fucking banger. Bobby Green is the same thing. He is a guaranteed good time. If it were me at this point too, like, I want to see him go up. Looking at kind of where the rankings are and kind of where he's at, I would hate to see him go against somebody who's wrestling heavy. Like, at this point, I kind of want to see Bobby Green shine. I want to see Bobby Green's style. And I just don't think he's going to have the same ability to do that with somebody who's literally just going to spend 15 minutes just trying to take him down, whether they can or not. So if I had to pick somebody right now, I actually really want to see him against Brad Riddell, because Brad Riddell was the last guy who fought Fiziev, and then Fiziev had recently fought Bobby Green just before that. If you don't remember the Bobby Green Fiziev fight, you should go back and watch it, because that was a banger. And the Brad Riddell Fiziev fight was additionally just as good of a banger. So I think it's safe to say that Brad Riddell versus Bobby Green would be a straight up banger.
That'd be cool.
So that's where I was going to go as well. But breaking news for anyone who doesn't know this yet, I know you guys know. It sure sounds like Bobby Green is stepping in 10 days against Islam Makhachev. At least that's the word right now. We lost Beneil Dariush. I'm literally in a bad mood about it. Fucking sucks. I was so hyped for this fight. But Bobby Green is stepping in. So, like, it's awesome. Bobby Green's going to get a main event. He's going to get his shine. We're going to get the focus on Bobby Green. Obviously, it's a huge chance for him, but it also sucks because it's the end of this Bobby Green run, because I can't possibly imagine him beating Islam Makhachev. So that's where we are.
Which one of you guys said? I think, Mark, you said a guy who's going to be able to beat Bobby Green is either going to have to crack him or wrestle hump him into dust.
Yes.
Yeah.
And that man is he's
Makhachev.
on deck. He's now on deck. 10 days away.
Yeah. Something tells me that's a rear naked choke just waiting to happen.
Yeah. I mean, Bobby Green's he's experienced. Obviously his boxing is so good, but he's so well rounded as a mixed martial artist.
Oh, he can wrestle. He can.
Yeah.
Could he summon up every ounce of defensive wrestling and grappling skill that he has in his career? Sure.
I don't know.
Even if he does, would it make a difference? I don't think so.
Let's make it clear. That night when Bobby Green and Islam Makhachev square off, your boy will be rooting for Bobby Green.
Oh yes, sir.
There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it.
Yeah.
That doesn't necessarily mean that I think Bobby Green will win that fight.
Yeah.
But I'll be rooting for him. And if he does something amazing, you'll hear me back on this podcast letting you know this is why I fucking love MMA.
Yes. I mean, John Anik was the one who got on, I think he said it on the broadcast and got on his Twitter afterwards, which I retweeted. You're welcome, John Anik.
Yeah.
That he thought he wanted to, he said, like, let's all get on a campaign to get Bobby Green into his first main event.
Amen.
I don't think this is what John Anik had in mind. Was to match him up in a week and a half against Islam Makhachev. So,
Bobby against like I don't know who, like a Tony Ferguson or something like that would have been fun. This not as fun.
Even against Beneil, I'd be like, let's go.
True.
Beneil's so good, but let's go.
Yeah.
Against Islam, man. Islam is just, and Islam's a giant at lightweight. I feel like he's gotten bigger.
Yeah, it's not the best matchup.
I'm not really concerned about Bobby Green being able to stand up with Islam, right? I don't think that's the concern at all. But the takedown, this like Dagestani takedown and like crush your soul shit from the ground, that's my real concern right there. Because I also don't think that Bobby Green has. I don't think many people, I shouldn't even say Bobby Green, many people, professional or otherwise, have the skills to stop Islam Makhachev for 3 rounds or 5 rounds, considering this is going to be a main event.
So I just looked quick to see if anyone had odds up yet, and only one site does, which is FanDuel.
Oh, wait, I want to guess.
Go ahead.
Makhachev is minus 800.
Minus 500?
Minus 820.
Oh,
Bobby Green is plus 570.
Let's go. Oh, Vegas, I'm coming, baby. I'm coming.
That is rough.
okay. In the interest of time, gentlemen, let us march down the rest of this card in our lightning round. Here we go. For those who don't know, our lightning round is our non-game show in which I challenge Mark and Omar, who don't always live up to this challenge, to give me their lightning takes on the rest of these matchups of this fight card. So here we go. Here is the lightning round. Marching down the card, Andre the Ageless Arlovsky split decision over Jared Vanderaa. Mark, go first.
Andre Arlovsky, turning back unranked heavyweights, has become one of the safest bets in MMA. Arlovsky has really found a game and a style that is tough to beat unless you possess some type of elite skill, and he put it on display again.
Omar, take it.
Arlovsky has become the ultimate gatekeeper, and it's kind of endearing at this point. I kind of like it.
Casey King O'Neal split decision over Roxanne Modafferi. Omar, take it first.
Oh, to put this in a lightning round is just so difficult. I love Roxanne. Roxanne has done so much for MMA. I'm going to get into this in the sphere, but as far as the fight is concerned, it kind of went the way I thought it was going to go as far as dominance was concerned. O'Neal put it on Roxanne. Her face was busted up, but Roxanne definitely did a lot more in that fight to beat on O'Neal than I thought she was going to be able to, and I was just really happy that it was at least competitive in the end.
Mark, take it.
Yeah, let's be real. That was a garbage split decision. Casey O'Neal won every round of that fight. Yeah. She put it on Roxy. She gets a big win for her resume. And Roxy, like Omar said, she fought well, and she really got a lot of love, like maybe even more love than I was expecting her to get. So that was cool to see.
Kyler the Matrix Phillips round 3 submission over Marcelo Rojo. Mark, go first.
There is a lot of potential in Kyler Phillips, man. He has so many raw skills. He's improving. And when he hits that sweet spot where he fully understands his style and how it's going to work best and how to pair it with his gas tank, he is going to be a big, big problem. But even right now, that man is nasty, and I'm ready to see him fight another ranked fighter again right now.
Omar, lightning.
Kyler Phillips, his inefficiency is what drives me crazy. The man throws spinning hook kicks when he doesn't need to. He throws things with all this wasted energy that doesn't land clean. And if he can tighten that part of his game up, that man's going to be a real problem.
Kyler Phillips is the Steph Curry of MMA.
Oh.
I explained this on the last episode. So y'all are going to have to watch and listen to that one. Okay, let's keep going. Carlos Black Jag Olberg, unanimous decision over Fabio Cherant. Omar, go first.
Yeah, I mean, it was a solid decision. I'm not really sure what you can really take away, but solid decision.
Mark, Olberg?
Yeah, not a lot to say about this one. Olberg fought like a guy who didn't want to risk blowing it again like he did against Kennedy Nchukwu when he had a dominant first round and then kind of blew his load. But he was clearly the better fighter, and he gets the W.
Okay, Ronnie Lawrence, UD over Mana Martinez. Mark, take it.
Dude, Ronnie Lawrence beat the shit out of Mana Martinez for 10 minutes. And that man nearly came back and finished Lawrence in the third round. That was a crazy friggin' fight.
Yeah.
But Ronnie Lawrence, aside from getting caught there in that moment, which, maybe we can excuse, Ronnie Lawrence looks like he's a really good fighter.
Omar, you're up. Ronnie Lawrence over Mana Martinez.
Yeah, I was actually really sad about Manny Martinez. You know, he kind of came into the UFC originally with that storyline of his coach having recently passed away and him kind of finally getting the run of the UFC and not being able to experience that with his coach, and lost the first fight. We all kind of gave him the little leeway, but he hasn't really lived up to sort of expectations on where you should be kind of in your UFC career. So I don't expect him to be around very often at this point. Solid win for Lawrence, and kind of a sad UFC run, unfortunately, for Manna.
Well, didn't he win his first fight?
I think if he won his first fight, he lost the next two.
No, he's just 1-1. He beat Guido Canetti, then he lost to Ronnie Lawrence. So he's got hope still. Don't count him out yet.
I thought he lost 2 already.
Nah. You probably just thought that because beating Guido Canetti doesn't mean anything.
All right, let's keep going. Jacob Mamba Malkoun, unanimous decision over AJ Dobson. Omar, go first.
Yeah, another solid decision. Yeah, again, not really much you can say about this one. It was a solid win, and we'll see what's next for Malkoun.
Mark, Malkoun over Dobson. What's your take?
Yeah, so I was really interested to see Dobson, just because anytime you tell me a guy is the protege of Mark Coleman and Matt Brown, I'm like, what is this Frankenstein that I'm going to watch here? And he does look like he has some talent to keep an eye on. He just kind of fights a little upright and wooden, which he'll need to fix. But he looked great for about like 8 minutes of that fight, or 7 minutes of that fight, I should say. Because then at the 3-minute mark of round 2, Malkoun was finally able to get a takedown, and the entire fight changed. It had looked like he was in trouble before that. He couldn't really get anything going, but that takedown changed the fight. And then from there, he just was super strong on top, had great strike accuracy on the ground, hurt Dobson. And like I said, everything changed. Round 3 was more of the same, and Malkoun was able to get a well-earned win.
Okay, Douglas Silva de Andrade, round 2 submission over Sergey Morozov. Mark, go first.
Holy hell, what a fight. What an unbelievable tale of 2 rounds. Silva de Andrade is a killer, man. That guy is no easy day in the office for anyone. That was such a gutty performance. He's so dangerous, and that performance is exactly the reason, if you guys remember, I suggested him as the next test for Adrian Yanez. That's exactly the type of guy that I feel like I would love to see Yanez in there with, a guy who just won't go away, who's a dog, who's dangerous, who's a vet, who's been in these positions. I still want that. I think that's a perfect fight. I don't think Yanez has been booked yet. Book me that one.
Nice. Omar, take it.
Yeah, that was a crazy ass fight. Credit should be given to Morozov for that lead uppercut that put de Andrade on his ass. I mean, those lead uppercuts don't get prettier than that, as far as I'm concerned. With that being said, man, after that first round, after all the blood was wiped from both of their bodies, the second round, of all things to expect, was not de Andrade being able to take his back, crack him, run after him, crack him again, drop him on the floor, get on his back, and then eventually choke him out. All while DC and Bisping are both telling de Andrade essentially that he's a dumbass and he needs to stand up because what he's doing is the wrong thing. Next thing you know, he's choking the life out of Morozov. So you want to talk about the commentary that night? That was probably the most crazy piece of commentary I heard all night.
Put him out with his eyes open too.
Open. It was like, I mean, he looked. Yeah. I mean, we joke about, he looked dead. He kind of looked dead.
Yep.
When it wasn't great. Yeah.
Yep.
Here we go. Jeremiah Wells, round 1 submission of Blood Diamond. Omar, go first.
Yeah, this one kind of sucked. I was really excited to see what Blood Diamond was about. He got hyped up by Izzy. We talked about him last week and what his, what the potential is of somebody getting hyped up by that team, being on that team. But the reality is he got out grappled like from bell to death. I mean, there at no point was Blood Diamond in control of that fight. At no point did you think Blood Diamond was going to get control of that fight. Jeremiah Wells just overwhelmed him, was able to smother him, take him down, and just do what he wanted with him until he subbed him. It was wild.
Mark, what's your take?
Yeah, so Wells almost immediately fell, which was crazy.
Oh, yeah.
But from there, he just methodically ground down Blood Diamond until he found the sub. Good win for Wells, but very underwhelming debut for Blood Diamond after the hype.
Yeah.
Maximus Grishin UD over William Nightmare Knight. This was the fight, by the way, in which Knight had a bad weight miss. He weighed in at 218, and they just said, screw it, let's make it a heavyweight bout. Mark, take it home.
Yeah, so Knight was kind of getting chipped away at from range like he often tends to do. The problem for him was just that he usually finds like some big moments to swing the fight, whether it's a takedown or a big shot or, something. He's an athletic guy. He has these moments. And in this fight, he just didn't. He kind of was kept at bay the whole fight. I don't know if the weight was an issue or if it was just Grisham looking good in there. But yeah, good win for Grisham.
All right, Omar, bring it home also with your take of Maximus Grishin over Will Knight.
Yeah, to be honest, kind of an underwhelming fight, especially to start the card off. I will say William Knight didn't look particularly great. He looked very, very slow, and I don't know if that had to do with the weight or whatever. But he looked crazy slow, and he was never able to get kind of the timing done when it came to kind of countering Grisham or even putting anything on Grisham. It just wasn't going to happen. And Grisham did what he had to do, kind of picked him apart from the outside and stayed safe. And I mean, that was Bob's your uncle. That was it.
That's it. And that does it for this week's lightning round. I tried to time my wine sip. It looks so stupid. All right, boys, let's put a bow on UFC 271 and find out who rose and who fell in our very own ranking systems, the Priaulx Rankings. Mark?
All right, we have 5 risers this week. Let's hop right into them. We'll work down the card. The first one, Tai Tuivasa, from number 9 to number 3 at heavyweight. Obviously, we've hit on this one already, but a massive jump into the stratosphere of heavyweight for Tai Tuivasa. We will see if he can hang on to being ranked at this type of level. Next one, Renato Moicano moves from number 24 to number 19 in my lightweight rankings. A nice move up from Moicano here. He's just sniffing the edge of those rankings for me. He's been on a steady rise since moving to lightweight, and he's very close to kind of breaking through now. Next, Casey O'Neill goes from number 24 to number 10 in my women's flyweight rankings. Good, the UFC had already jumped her up. I think she was already at like 10 or 11 or 12 coming into this fight. Despite her not having a win over any credible opponent just because of how good she's looked. I was waiting for that credible opponent to be added to the resume. Now it has in Roxy, so she makes that big jump to number 10. Maxime Grishin, as we mentioned, he was number 37 in my light heavyweight rankings. He jumps all the way up to number 23. William Knight had looked good. He just beat Alonzo Menefield in his last fight, so that's a good win for Maxime Grishin. He's a guy who's been around a while, kind of has a nice resume outside of the UFC, but he had a little bit of a rough start in the UFC. Now he moves to 2-2, so moves up the ranks slightly there. And the last one is Ronnie Lawrence. Goes from number 67 to number 54 in my bantamweight rankings. Continues the march up. He moves to 2-0. The level of opposition hasn't been huge yet, but he's looked really good. And there are no fallers this week. There was no one who really had kind of a bad loss to someone below them or anything that would make them fall much. So no one fell too significantly.
Okay. And that does it for our Priaulx rankings. Thank you, sir. Now, boys, let us hop into the headlines and the goings-on of the MMA world with our next segment, Inside the MMA Sphere. Omar, what do you got for us this week?
Oh, yeah. All right. So we got a couple of stories for you that we'll get into some fight announcements. First on the list, Kayla Harrison. So Kayla Harrison, as you guys may have remembered, has been kind of testing free agency for a little bit now. There was rumors of her joining PFL, and that was kind of like done deal at this point. Apparently negotiations kind of fell through at the 11th hour, and right now she's still kind of in this free agency limbo. She's not thrilled about it at this point. She kind of wants something to do it now. She wants something finalized. I'm sure her management team will figure it out, but as of right now, she's still in limbo, and PFL is not a done deal. She did tell MMA Junkie in an interview that there were rumors going around of her going down to 135 potentially to go to the UFC and challenge Juliana Pena, especially because now Amanda's not in the mix. Amanda and her were teammates. Now they're no longer teammates technically since Amanda left ATT. So there's just some opportunities there at 135 in the UFC that are interesting to her. But at the same time, she was talking about MMA Junkie about how those rumors and about her joking about it, saying in order for her to have to make 135, she'd probably have to do some real changes to her life. Get a nutritionist and this whole deal, because making 145 is already difficult for her, it seems, or already like a cut in and of itself. So in order for her to do that, it would be super difficult to her to get to 135. So I think besides just the opportunity, I think she would also want a lot more money than what she was probably getting offered to go down to 135. So we'll kind of see what happens with Kayla Harrison. But as of right now, her next step in her career is kind of still up in the air.
My question is, why would she start there? Like, why not? If she is going to come to the UFC, why not start at 145? And if you win that belt, then consider trying to be the double champ. Like, I don't get why she would just skip 145.
Yeah, I'm not 100% sure. I don't know if it has to do with the Amanda thing. Maybe it all has to do with money, because I'm assuming she doesn't want to fight Amanda for peanuts either.
Yeah, like I would get it if UFC didn't have a 145 division, but they do. So like, why not try to get that belt first? I don't get. And her and Amanda seem like they have zero problem fighting each other in the past when they've talked about it. So even if she has to like fight Norman Dumont first, like, all right, do that first while Amanda's fighting Pena, and then fight him. Like, I don't know. I just feel like I don't love the idea of Kayla cutting to 135. It just,
I don't either.
Seems big to be doing that. And like, if she already had won the 145 belt and she wanted to try to be double champ, like, what can I say? Like, all right, go for it. I just don't see the need to do that right now.
I've been equating it to how Daniel Cormier kind of had to go down to 205 for all those years. Like, it was a serious change in the way that he lived his life. It was a very specific time where he had to take a lot of like outside of the cage, inside of the cage very seriously in his weight management. I just don't know if Kayla Harrison really wants to do that.
So I agree, but DC had the weight to lose. Kayla is not heavy. She's just larger than these girls. Like, sure. I feel like she doesn't have that same obvious weight to lose that DC had.
Right. I mean, that's valid.
I don't want her to do something unhealthy for no reason.
Yeah. DC had a few Popeyes that he could have gotten rid of. Yeah, makes sense. Yeah, that's a good point. Next on the list, Henry Cejudo done reached out to Cody Garbrandt. Apparently, he saw Cody Garbrandt get his ass whooped in his last fight and sees real potential in Cody Garbrandt. I think we all see potential in Cody Garbrandt. His skills, regardless of how those fights end, like, the kid is talented. He is very talented. He may not be putting things together the right way or whatever, but he's talented. And Henry Cejudo thinks that he would be able to guide him in the right direction. Thinks that he can kind of help him put things together. He's not talking about necessarily bringing Garbrandt onto his team or anything like that, or having him leave Alpha Male or anything that detrimental, but definitely wants to at least be kind of a guiding light to Garbrandt, so to say. So I don't even know if Garbrandt necessarily took that phone call, but would be interesting to see if him and Garbrandt get into the training mat together, because that might be a different Garbrandt going forward.
Cejudo has fashioned himself as just like, I don't mean this to be a short joke, but he's like Yoda of MMA. Like, he's like the new Mystic Mac, man. He just makes like these predictions, and sometimes I feel like he's always kind of right.
Well, it didn't go so well with Wei Li. I mean, granted, you could argue she won the fight, so I guess, but
it was much better than the first fight.
Yeah. But yeah, I don't know what Garbrandt feels about Henry Cejudo. Like, maybe he doesn't even like him for all I know, but like, at the point your career is at right now, if you're Cody Garbrandt, like, why the fuck not when someone that good is trying to help you out? Like, sure.
And there's really not
what he got to tell me.
There's really not any reason for him not to like him. They haven't crossed paths. There's no.
Well, Benavidez beef between.
Oh.
It's his teammate, so I wasn't sure where they really stand.
Yeah, something tells me Benavidez doesn't give a shit. And if Cody Garbrandt gives a shit more than Benavidez does, then Garbrandt is just dumb at that point. So
I kind of assume the same thing.
I mean, that would be interesting. Like I said, I'm interested to see if Cody Garbrandt takes him up on his offer, because if all of a sudden Garbrandt starts putting things together a lot more, the flyweight or bantamweight division might be super interesting then.
Yeah.
Next on the list, Lorenzo Hood, who is a World Series of Fighting alum. He actually competed on Dana White Contender Series back in October 12th. He had a loss to Martin Bode. I love that fucking name. And he was actually suspended for 2 years and fined almost $2,000 after he tested positive for an anabolic steroid, methanolone, during a Nevada Athletic State Commission urine test. If you're wondering, this is the first time he's ever been caught with anything. He's the first time he's ever been failed to test, and he immediately got the maximum suspension of 2 years off of the first pop. The reason why is because he didn't cooperate with the Nevada Athletic State Commission. He did not work with them to kind of figure out what was, where the tainted supplement come from or what happened necessarily. He didn't follow up with the Nevada Athletic State Commission when it came to the processes, I guess, involved in going through all this stuff. So they said, screw it. He doesn't care. We're just going to give him the 2 years and the maximum fine, and he can deal with it from there. So there you go. Kind of hardcore.
Okay.
Let's see. Next on the list, kind of a fight announcement, but with a sprinkle of news. Kat Zingano will be fighting Pam Sorensen in her next fight. And it should be noted that she officially turned down a title fight with Chris Cyborg.
Yeah.
I don't know what the hell. I've been wanting to see that fight for forever at this point.
Did you see why?
No, I didn't.
Because Cyborg wouldn't consent to the drug test that Zingano was asking for. So she said, fuck it, I'm not fighting her.
I no longer disagree with Kat Zingano.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know the full details, but I saw that little headline today. So
I mean, Chris Cyborg could feel a way, I'm assuming, potentially about being asked to do something like that. Because I'm assuming, it's a straight shot at her credibility and her past, essentially, right? But at the same time, like, you can't be super surprised. It's not the UFC. We don't have USADA. The fact is, you could be doing any and all kinds of shit and not getting caught. And it's not like you hadn't been caught before. And I don't think Zingano is necessarily out of pocket asking her for a drug test. That seems reasonable to me. But
yeah,
that's unfortunate. I really want to watch that fight.
I know. I thought we were getting it. It sucks.
Yeah. On top of that, Chris Cyborg actually only has 1 or 2 fights left on her contract, according to her. So interestingly enough, I'm kind of wondering who do you guys think that she should fight with those last 2 up? I guess Kat Zingano was one of them, but
yeah, I mean, if Kayla's not signing there and she's not fighting Kat, it's kind of like there's nothing that's really too attractive left. She's pretty much beaten the rest of those top girls already. That division is not terribly deep at all in Bellator.
Yeah.
So yeah, Julia Budd left.
I was just thinking about Julia, but I wasn't sure what her deal was.
She went to PFL. Yeah, I'm the only girl I can think of is Leah McCourt, who's undefeated in Bellator, but like, that's nothing. But like, sure, she could fight her, and then after she knocks her out, that's kind of the end of that. There's not really anyone else.
Yeah, that's unfortunate. The one real competition that we really thought might be fun is just not going to happen now. So
yeah, maybe they'll figure it out.
So we kind of touched on this already earlier on when we were talking about some of the earlier fights, but Islam Makhachev and Beneil Dariush is officially off of the next week's main event. Beneil Dariush injured his ankle in training and was forced to withdraw. So it looks like the rumors are literally nothing is official. This all went down. We're recording Wednesday night at this point. This went down maybe like 3 hours ago. So
breaking news here, folks.
For real. So it is interesting to see what is going to come of it. But the rumor right now is that Bobby Green will be stepping in against Islam Makhachev for this main event happening next week, which is 1, super interesting, and 2, gangster shit from Bobby Green, considering he just went 3 rounds with this dude last week. So yeah, interested to see if that becomes the official word. I would definitely make sure you guys watch this weekend though, because those changes are going to happen super quick and will definitely happen before we talk next. So let's get to the couple of fight announcements and then we will move right on along. Umar Nurmagomedov versus Brian Kelleher has officially been added to UFC 272 on March 5th. That is a hell of a fight. Super interested to see what happens with that one. Curtis Blade versus Chris Daukaus will be headlining UFC Columbus on March 26th. Glad they found a headliner for that card because I wasn't really sure what they were going to do with that. Donald Cerrone versus Joe Lozon is still on. However, it has been moved to UFC 272, I believe, if I'm not mistaken. Let me double check that. Sorry. I think I got my notes all messed up.
That's okay. We're good. We could just fine.
274, excuse me. It's been moved back to 274. And that one will be happening on May 7th. So it looks like it's just a week different, but I think they wanted to give it the pay-per-view treatment as well they should have. So wrongs have been righted. Angela Hill will be fighting Verna Jandaroba next. That will be happening on UFC Fight Night, May 14th. That is probably going to be the scrap of all scraps in one of the women's divisions because that's a crazy ass fight right there. I need Angela Hill to squeak out a win at this point. We'll discuss that when time comes, but I need that win. Polyana Viana will be returning against Tabitha Ricci. That has been added to UFC Fight Night May 21st. That is also, I mean, I'm always down to see Polyana Viana fight as far as I'm concerned. And last on the list is just a rumor. Nothing has been official. No date has been set. No contracts have been signed. However, Yair Rodriguez may be fighting Brian Ortega next.
Yes. Let's knock on all the woods.
Ninja shit at its finest. Let's go. That's all I got for you boys.
What a great fight. What a great note to end on. And now, gentlemen, let us look towards the future to this coming weekend. On Saturday night, we have not one but two promotions putting on some big fights in America. That being Bellator and the UFC. Let us start with Bellator, guys. So this Saturday night, we have Bellator 274, Gracie versus Storley. All right, so it is the welterweight main event. Special note, this will mark the first time a non-title fight and non-Grand Prix tournament bout is a 5-round main event in Bellator history.
There we go.
That's
I didn't
fun.
realize that.
So it is Bellator's number 4 ranked Neiman Gracie taking on their number 5 ranked welterweight Logan the Storm Storley. So just a quick breakdown of this. Neiman Gracie, of course, of the famed Gracie family. He's actually is a 4th generation Gracie. He is the 33-year-old fighting out of New York. His record stands at 11-2, nearly all of that under the Bellator banner, with 9 of his 11 wins coming by way of submission. Of course, he's a Gracie. That's like a birthright. He is, though, coming off of a TKO victory over Mark Lemminger back in September. All right. We got Logan Storm Storley. He is 29, fighting out of Webster, South Dakota. My man has a record of 12-1 with 8 knockouts. No, noteworthy, no submission victories on his record. So there might be a little bit of a grappling disparity here. And he is coming off of a split decision win over Dante Shiro back in August. Mark, let me throw it over to you first. What is your take of this Bellator headliner?
So I'll give you the odds first. The favorite is Neiman Gracie. He's minus 170. Logan Storley is plus 135. So pretty close odds. This is a really intriguing main event for me, honestly. Both of these guys are right there at the top of Bellator's welterweight division. I don't want to say the winner gets a title shot because I'm assuming that'll be Jason Jackson's next. Once Amasov MVP plays out, I'm saying Jason Jackson, I'm assuming will get the winner of that, considering he's on a 5-fight streak that includes a recent decision over Neiman Gracie. But still, the winner of this one is going to be right there. As you said, Gracie is 11-2. His only losses are to Rory McDonald and Jason Jackson. The Rory fight he did lose. The Jackson fight absolutely could have gone his way, and I feel like even most people scored it his way. Logan Storley is 12-1. His only loss is to the champ, Yaroslav Amasov, and it was by split decision in a very close fight, and he's easily pushed Amasov more than anyone in Bellator so far. So
And that was 3 rounds, right? That wasn't even a 5-round
3 rounds,
fight.
correct, yeah. So these guys are legit. This fight's going a bit under the radar. It's not the flashiest main event Bellator's ever put on, but it's a good matchup. And in a way, it's kind of your typical wrestler versus grappler matchup. Yep. Logan Storley's an absolute beast of a wrestler. He honestly has some nice grappling, too. If I remember right, he almost had Amasov in a rear naked choke at one point. So I don't want to make it sound like he doesn't have grappling, but as you said, the man across from him happens to be named Gracie, which is generally a pretty big clue as to who has the advantage in that department. So to me, the question will be, can Storley work his game well enough while having to worry about being caught in something? And can he stay out of that something? And another big note, honestly, is if this thing does play out some on the feet, Neiman Gracie has kind of suddenly out of nowhere found some striking. Like he landed some sneaky big shots in his recent fights. So that could end up being an X factor too. But really what this comes down to is that it's a 5-round fight. I think Storley may have some control at different times. He is. I assume he'll have some takedown success, but across 5 rounds, it's just hard for me to envision a guy who wants to wrestle the way Storley wants to wrestle, going all 25 minutes without making a mistake. And one mistake is all it takes against Neiman if you're going to be on the mat for that much time. So give me Neiman Gracie. I will say a little later in the fight, I'll say 4th round submission for Neiman Gracie.
Omar, what's your take of this matchup, and give us your pick?
Yeah, it is stylistically, it is a very interesting matchup. It is very kind of typically a BJJ versus wrestler fight. The thing I love about Storley, or I find interesting about Storley, is his activity on the ground. There's a lot of guys when they tend to take people to the ground or try to use their grappling or be grappling heavy, there tends to be a lack of strikes and a lack of damage getting done. It's all mostly control, trying essentially not to lose the fight, right, by staying on top, staying in control. Storley doesn't necessarily follow that same path. Storley is like very much like one of the old school ground and pounders, like a Tito, even like a GSP when it comes to the activity where he's on the ground. He may not always be passing, although he does pass, but he may not always be passing, but he's definitely dropping bombs on you, whether it's on your body, on your head, constantly damaging people when they're on the ground. If there's one thing that Gracies don't like, it's getting hit on the ground. Gracies are very good at chain submissions, which basically means they can go from, as an example, let's say they have an arm bar, right? That arm bar may not be in tight. So they'll switch from the arm bar and pull their person right into a triangle. There's no moment where they're not in a submission before they're in their next submission. That's a chain submission. They're very good at doing that, going from one submission to the next, to the next, to the next, to the next. They're very good at using submissions to threaten a sweep or to take a sweep in general. They're not even necessarily going for a submission. So the Gracies are very good at utilizing their jiu-jitsu in the most creative ways to get themselves where they need to go. The problem is that with wrestlers, especially if Storley's not trying to push the agenda and move to half guard, side control, mount, whatever. If he's basically comfortable staying in his full guard or maybe even his half guard, there's a lot less necessarily for Gracie to work with and work out of. And I'm confident that if Storley's keeping him on the ground, Gracie is probably not trying to get back up. And by the time the fight ends, whether it's a decision or a KO or whatever, Gracie is going to have spent basically 4 or 5 rounds on the ground trying to pull off whatever he wants to pull off, but not being able to. And I think that's one of the biggest detriments to the Gracie's game when it comes to these types of competitions. Not necessarily a fight. In a street fight, that probably works pretty damn well. But in these competitions where things are timed and we're scoring based on certain parameters, being on the ground, searching for that one submission while getting your ass beat is not going to do it. So I think I'm going to go with Storley by unanimous decision.
Okay. All right. Let's now move on to the UFC card and main event from this weekend, Saturday night as well.
Can I say some more stuff about the Bellator card?
Please go right ahead.
Sorry. Yeah, I just wanted to point out that it's a pretty interesting card. There's nothing that is quite like the high level matchup that main event is. But Andrei Koreshkov, who I know we love, is in the co-main event. He's fighting short-time UFC vet Chance Rencounter, who's game, but probably ends up being Koreshkov's next victim. But he's always fun to watch. You have Adam Piccolotti and Georgi Karkanyan, which is a solid lightweight scrap. You have Davian Franklin, who is a beast heavyweight. He's 4-0 thus far. Hasn't really fought anyone, and he's getting his fight now where he's fighting Saeed Salma, who's the man that just beat Vitaly Minikov.
That's a good fight.
So we'll see what happens there. Part of me wants to say Franklin's just going to get exposed, but you never know. So we will see. And then you have Brennan Ward back after almost 5 years. Former Bellator stalwart, been in a million wars for them. He's still only 33 years old, which is crazy to think after he's been out for this long. And the guy they've given him is 7-10 in his MMA career. So I think they're trying to get Ward back into the fold pretty quick here, hoping he's as exciting as he always was. Couple prospects, Jalen Bates, who's undefeated and good, Aviv Ghazali, who's undefeated and good. So yeah, it's a solid card. Oh, and even a good women's veteran fight. Deanna Bennett is fighting Justine Kish, who was in the UFC for a while there. So that's a pretty solid fight. So it's nothing crazy, but it's got interesting fights throughout on that card.
All right. Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. And now, folks, let's hop over to the UFC side of the weekend. UFC Fight Night, Walker versus Hill. In the main event, a light heavyweight clash. Main event, Johnny Walker versus Jamal Hill. So we got Johnny Walker, the 29-year-old, fighting out of Rio de Janeiro. He is 6'5". His record stands at 18 victories, 6 defeats. 17 of those victories are finishes. 15 of those finishes coming by way of knockout. He is, though, coming off of a unanimous decision loss against Thiago Santos back in October. Jamal Sweet Dreams Hill, the 30-year-old, fighting out of Grand Rapids, Michigan, my backyard. He is 9-1, so not a very long tenure in mixed martial arts as a pro, but very impressive record thus far, and very impressive that he's made it to the UFC. 5 finishes, all by knockout, and he's coming off of a very impressive under 1 minute knockout over Jimmy Crute back in December. So, Omar, let me start with you first this time. What's your take on this light heavyweight clash between Johnny Walker and Jamal Hill?
So I pulled up their records real quick, and I have a question before we get into it. Mark, do you remember the Paul Craig fight against Jamal Hill?
Yeah.
Do you remember how he got his arm like ripped out, basically?
Yep.
Was that not how that fight ended?
Yeah, it was.
So why the fuck do they have it as a TKO, elbows and punches? Okay,
What?
at least all right. At least we're on the same page. I thought I was bugging and I forgot something.
Where were you What website were you looking on?
Sherdog has it as TKO.
Really?
Was it actually? Did his arm break? But then he just kind of punched him and.
Oh, you know what?
Was it not a submission?
Didn't he have it?
Oh, it was like dangling.
Until it broke, but then he kept elbowing him, and then the ref saw the arm and just waved it.
Yeah, it was dangling when he was getting hit.
That's a TKO. Yeah, that's stupid.
Okay.
Yeah.
All I remember was that damn arm. That arm was so bad. All right. Just wanted to make sure. Very good. Yeah. So this fight's super interesting. Johnny Walker, when we first saw Johnny Walker kind of come into the octagon, we all had very high expectations for what he was going to bring to the table, and he has been at best hit or miss. I don't have as much confidence in him. I think he's a lot more flash than he is efficiency. And I don't think that he's at this point good enough to be that flashy. It just doesn't seem to really be working, especially once you start getting to the higher echelon of that division. Like it's cool when you're fighting guys that are just not highly ranked and, don't have the same kind of experience as the top guys do. You can do all this crazy shit, but at the end of the day, if you're doing all these backflips and stuff and then getting knocked out, it doesn't really matter. So I don't really have that much confidence in Johnny Walker as I did when he first came in. Jamal Hill, on the other hand, I've kind of always been a big fan of just by the way he fights, his attitude towards the way he fights. He is I would say he's a very aggressive striker, but very measured. The Paul Craig one, I think, was the only fight that he's lost. Yeah. And he's been, I would say, relatively dominant in most of his other fights. So I've always been a Jamal Hill fan. I think it'll probably be the same thing here. I think that he won't let Johnny Walker get in his head. All these Johnny Walker antics, all this crazy shit that he does, I don't think is going to affect Jamal Hill the way that it might be affecting some of these other lower guys. And I see Jamal Hill knocking out Johnny Walker first round.
Okay. Mark, what's your take of this light heavyweight clash?
So Walker's the dog here. He's plus 205. Jamal Hill is minus 265, which is definitely wider than I was expecting this to be. This is a solid matchup right now at the bottom of the light heavyweight top 10 there. The UFC has Walker ranked 10th and Hill 12th. Personally, I've got them basically flipped. I have Hill 11th, Walker 13th. But either way, these two are in a very similar spot right now. This is a big matchup for their career trajectories at this point. And now they get elevated to a main event where the winner will really get a big showcase. And I think that man is going to be Jamal Hill. Reason being, I don't see Johnny Walker utilizing any offensive wrestling. And even if he did, I'm not sure how effective it would be. So that means Jamal Hill is getting to fight a straight striking match where he doesn't even have to worry about anything else. And in that scenario, I think that man is way too clean and way too precise to be beaten. I wasn't always a huge Jamal Hill guy, but that Jimmy Crute performance in his last fight really opened my eyes to how good he is. I honestly think Walker's best chance, other than suddenly discovering a wrestling game, would be to go back to wild Johnny Walker, because the Johnny Walker that fought last fight after training at TriStar and all that fought Thiago Santos, that fainted 100 times and was tentative and all that, that guy is going to get pieced up by Jamal Hill. I think his only shot is to go back to that car crash fighter and just try to make it crazy. But, without that, I don't think that fainting, stay at range Walker, and he only has a 2-inch height, 2-inch reach advantage in this fight. So for a guy as big as he is, it's not really a huge advantage in this matchup. I think that guy's going to be kind of a sitting duck in a range fight against Jamal Hill. So I think he gets hit. I think he gets hit hard. And I will say Jamal Hill round 2 KO.
Yeah, the difference for me is it's the chin of Johnny Walker. I think Johnny Walker has proven to not have the strongest chin, and he's gonna get dinked. He's gonna get what does Robin Black say? Bink.
Yeah.
He's gonna get binked, I think, by Jamal Hill.
Yeah.
I mean, these are two big boys. I would not be surprised if Johnny Walker went out there and looked good and hurt Jamal Hill, but I'm taking Jamal Hill. All right, folks. Any other fights you guys want to discuss on this Fight Night card?
I mean, there are some good fighters that you should probably look out for. I would say.
Give us a name, Omar.
Well, so the Joaquin Buckley Abdul Razak Al Hassan fight is probably going to be the next most exciting fight, I think, on that card at this point. That's just, I mean, somebody's definitely going to sleep in that fight. Jim Miller is always a good time. I don't care if he's fighting a 0-1 guy, a 30-0 guy. I don't really give a shit. Jim Miller is a fantastic time, win or lose. So always definitely good to watch. Kyle Dawkins versus Jamie Pickett is another fantastic fight. Kyle Dawkins, I'm interested to kind of see exactly what happens here with this Kyle Dawkins stuff, because he recently had the loss, right?
He had the no contest, right, with Kevin.
That's what it was, like a no contest.
And he was supposed to fight Julian Marquez here, and then Marquez pulled out, so now it's Pickett on short notice.
And technically, he kind of won that whatever. Yeah. But yes, interesting to see how that one works out. Jessica Rose Clark back in the mix. She just had a great interview with Ariel talking about how she kind of found her mental sensor, so she should be in a better place. Hopefully that shows up in her performance. Gabriel Benitez. Y'all know how I feel about Gabriel Benitez. So my boy will be fighting that night. I mean, like I said, there's nothing similarly to the Bellator card. There's nothing that we're necessarily going to be running home about right now on the preview, but the potential to be talking about something next week about the crazy shit that went down in these next two cards, very high, very high.
Cool.
Yeah,
Mark,
I'll touch on a few of those real quick.
Yeah.
I don't really have any different ones from the ones he said, but the Jim Miller one is interesting because it's not like last time where he kind of welcomed a random newcomer to the UFC. Nicholas Moda actually has some hype. A lot of people like him. So this is kind of a better test. I'm more into this one for Jim Miller. Omar's boy, Gabriel Benitez, is fighting David Onama, who is another guy who had a lot of hype. He ended up making his UFC debut up a weight class and on short notice when he fought at lightweight, filling in against Mason Jones, and he ended up losing the fight. But now he will make his proper debut with a camp at featherweight. So we'll see if he looks much better. Not an easy fight getting Gabriel Benitez out of the gate. And then, the one Omar said I love, Abdul Razak Al Hassan and Joaquin Buckley. Both of these dudes can sleep you at any time. Both are killer be killed type of fighters. They generally are winning or losing by KO. The lines are tight. Buckley's -150 favorite. Al Hassan is +125. Buckley does have a 3-inch reach advantage, which could certainly end up being a factor, but I kind of think I'd say it's Al Hassan who's a little more fluid in finding the big shots. So that's a really interesting fight. I wouldn't miss that one. I think that's guaranteed violence, and I think someone gets put down.
Yeah, I don't necessarily see Joaquin using distance management to that kind of extent either. Joaquin's always trying to go for a bomb of some kind. He's trying to close the distance. He's not trying to keep it separate.
Yeah.
Joaquin Phoenix, of course, the owner of one of the most spectacular.
Joaquin Phoenix?
What did I say?
He's a fantastic Joker. Fantastic Joker.
Joaquin Buckley, of course, the owner of one of the most fantastic spinning
Acting
kick
resumes
knockouts ever.
Yeah. We could be 15 years in the future. That video will still be playing. That kick is insane.
Yes, it is.
We could be 15 years in the future, and I will still call him Joaquin Phoenix.
Facts.
Okay.
Facts.
All right, folks. Let's end with a little trivia.
Oh yeah.
Become the custom. All right, boys. I have two in the can here. I could just do one, but I have a backup, or I could just do both. What do you want to do?
Let's do both, baby.
Because you guys are hard, as we've established. You guys are both hard to find good trivia questions for.
Well, fucking Mark is the one that keeps winning. I keep losing.
Okay, here we go. Here's the first one. Who was the first UFC fighter to hand Chuck Liddell a loss inside the UFC octagon, and how did he do it?
Holy fuck! Why am I blanking? Hold on.
Was it Couture? That seems like that would have been really far in.
Yes.
Couture by knockout.
Mark?
Yes.
The answer is Jeremy Horn.
Ah.
At UFC 19 in March of 1999.
Holy shit.
So that was before Chuck's run? He lost an early fight before the run?
I don't even think his run was in 99.
Wow.
Chuck Liddell's first fight was in the UFC as a pro at UFC 17. Then he had a fight at a different promotion, IVC 6. Then back in the UFC for his third fight against Jeremy Horn was his first loss. Then out of the UFC, then back in the UFC, then out of the UFC, then back in the UFC, then Pride, then UFC. It was he kind of bounced around until his big run.
All right,
it should be noted that
by the time he was Chuck Liddell,
yeah,
his first loss was to Randy Couture by knockout. So we did get it in a way, but we didn't get it. So
it should also be noted that he retired Jeremy Horn off of a knockout later on in his career. So he got that one back for sure.
Yes. But yeah, that was a good one.
That was a good one. I didn't know
as
Jeremy
you can
Horn.
see, our minds went to when he lost the big fight. We had to try to think of what that big fight was. But it wasn't that fight.
That's right.
Tricky.
Arm triangle, by the way. I don't know if I mentioned that.
Yeah, Jeremy Horn was fucking slick as hell with subs, man. Slick as hell.
Yeah, man. All right. Number 2, here we go. Closing the show here. What year did the elder Diaz brother, Nick Diaz, make his UFC debut, and on what UFC card was it?
Oh, fucking hell.
I've asked similar questions like this, but...
Oh, I remember... Wait, no, because it's... Oh, I just saw a video of this, actually. He was so young.
How many years ago did we say the Lawler fight was? I forget now how many years
because it was like one before that, right?
Was that 20 years ago? Is that what the answer to that was? 20 years ago? Because it was like one fight before that.
And he wasn't even like the Nick Diaz that he became the Nick Diaz that everybody knows after that fight.
In the Lawler fight, correct. Yeah. I mean,
I don't even remember that fucking kid's name.
I can't believe we can't remember how many years ago that was. Because we've been talking about it on this show so much that it was how many years ago that he fought Lawler? Was it 20?
I want to say 20. I want to say 2005.
I'll give you a kind of a hint. His first fight as a pro was in 2001. And it was not in the UFC.
So it wasn't 20 that he fought Lawler. It must have been 15 or some shit.
Yeah, I want to say 2005.
Yeah, that's kind of where I'm at too.
05?
I'm going to say
03 too. Shit.
Yeah, because if it was 15, I feel like I remember it being a round number. So if that was, he fought Lawler in 21, so 15 would be 2006. So yeah, I'll say 2005 also. But I don't know what fucking card.
You're on the right track with a round number. It was a rounder number than 5. It was 2003.
Oh, well, damn it. God damn it. Was it UFC 30?
It was UFC 44 against Jeremy Jackson, and he won by armbar in the third round.
Wow.
Nick Diaz, legend.
It hurts when the answers are like right there.
Yeah.
We can pull them out.
That was tough. I'm looking.
I never would have gotten the guy, but the year was bugging me, man. I was going between 2005 and 2003, and
Getting the guy was impossible. So Lawler was 2004. So we were saying 17 years ago when we were previewing that fight. Man, I feel like we were saying like a cleaner. I don't know why in my head I thought it was like 15 or 20 or some shit.
I think in our head we just wanted it to be cleaner.
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah, for sure.
All right, well, we were close.
All right, boys.
Damn,
well,
Mike got us
one.
both this week. Mike, I think that's the first time you did a double stump.
It's weird. There's a sweet spot because I could ask you guys all of the old school MMA stuff. It would be super hard. You guys know everything that's current and new, so it's weird.
Yeah,
to
the years are hard. Anything with a year.
Yeah, years are hard.
I can't even remember how old I am.
A lot of my recent memories in like the last 10 years are usually by like what UFC card or what UFC fight it has been around. So like I'm decent with years, but the fighter themselves and the event itself is where I get trippy.
Yeah. Well, gentlemen, let us put a bow on this one. This was a fun one, guys.
Yeah.
I want to thank our audience who's been with us. Guys, and speaking of trivia, if you think of an awesome trivia question, send it to me or send it to the show's Instagram or DM us or put it in the comments down below. We will answer every single message, DM, and comment for sure. Find us on social media at @andnew_MMA show. Find us on YouTube, subscribe, like, share, all the things. Wherever you get your podcasts, listen to us in the car, all the places. We love you. That's about it, guys. Any parting shots?
That's it. Time for me to go to sleep.
Likewise.
Yeah, man. Just
love
share us
guys.
around.
If
If you got a friend that even remotely likes MMA, just share a little bit of the podcast with them. Get them prepared for this upcoming week. Let us into your lives.
I will say, if you are someone who listens to the show and you have not subscribed, please click that sub button. They help us. It's a big deal. We appreciate it.
So much. So much.
Just click the button.
All right, folks. See you next week.
Peace.
Peace.